The first violation letter arrived on a Monday morning. Grass exceeds community standard. We measured. It didn't. We fixed it anyway. Then another arrived. Mailbox alignment incorrect. It was perfectly vertical, but signed by Karen, HOA president. A subtle, almost imperceptible smile at the bottom of the letter hinted this was more than enforcement. By the end of the month, we noticed a pattern. Every minor adjustment we made prompted another notice. Our neighbors? Quiet. No letters, no fines. It was the same across the street, same neighborhood, same HOA, but somehow the rules applied only to us. Karen's enforcement wasn't impartial. It was targeted. Karen's car appeared at the same time every morning, slow crawl past our home, clipboard on the passenger seat. We recorded every pass, every notice, every fine. The rules weren't random. They were a weapon. And the more we complied, the more violations came. It was escalation disguised as administrations. Dates, times, letter numbers, photos, comparisons to other houses revealed undeniable bias. The HOA's community standards weren't standards at all. They were selective rules designed to pressure us. This was harassment, not governance. We used to be silent. Requests for clarification were ignored. Fines were challenged formally. It wasn't just about grass or mailboxes anymore. It was about fairness, accountability, and exposing a system where rules applied to some, but never to Karen's favorites. We were done being the only ones bound by her version of community compliance. At first, we assumed the violations would stop once we corrected everything. That's how rules are supposed to work. You fix the issue, the notice ends, and everyone moves on. But that's not what happened. The week after we replaced the mailbox Karen complained about, a new notice appeared. Mailbox post material inconsistent with neighborhood aesthetic. The exact same design existed on 3 houses down the street. None of them received violations. We checked. And that's when the pattern stopped looking like coincidence. It started looking intentional. Compliance wasn't ending the fines. It was triggering the next one. So we began quietly observing, not confronting, not complaining, just watching. Across the street, a neighbor left their trash bins out overnight. No violation. 2 houses down, a basketball hoop sat in a driveway for weeks. No violation. But the morning after our bins sat out for 20 extra minutes, Karen's letter arrived before noon. Signed, stamped, filed. The rules clearly existed. They just weren't applied equally. We started documenting everything. Photos of houses with the same violations, dates and timestamps, copies of every notice we received. Soon the evidence grew impossible to ignore. 5 houses had landscaping identical to ours. Only 1 household received warnings. Ours. It wasn't random enforcement. It was selective enforcement. And selective enforcement creates something dangerous. Leverage. At the next HOA meeting, I raised the question calmly. No accusations, just facts. Can the board explain how enforcement decisions are applied consistently across the neighborhood? Karen leaned back in her chair. Her smile was tight, measured. Some homes require more oversight, she said. The room shifted uncomfortably because everyone understood exactly what she meant. The realization, that was the moment everything changed. Not the fines, not the violations. The realization, Karen didn't want compliance. She wanted pressure. Because pressure creates silence. Silence keeps authority unchallenged. But Karen had made one mistake. She assumed we would eventually give up. Instead, we kept documenting every letter, every inspection, every inconsistency. And slowly, the question stopped being, why are we getting fined? It became something much bigger. Why are the rules only enforced against us? By the 3rd month, our folder had grown thick. Violation letters, photos, dates, screenshots of neighborhood conditions. And something else began to emerge when we laid everything out across the table one evening. Timing. Karen's inspections always seemed to happen right after we corrected something. We fixed the landscaping. 3 days later, driveway alignment violation. We adjusted the driveway. A week later, exterior decor notice. Every time we complied, a new problem appeared. But when we compared those same violations across the neighborhood, nothing happened. No warnings, no citations, no fines. It wasn't just selective enforcement anymore. It was targeted escalation. The fines were increasing too. $75 became $150, then $250. Then daily accumulation notices started appearing at the bottom of the letters. Failure to correct within compliance window may result in daily penalties. The strange part? The violations were already corrected, but Karen began claiming inspection discrepancies, meaning she could claim the issue wasn't resolved properly, which meant the fines continued. One letter even included a warning about potential lien escalation if the balance remained unpaid, over a mailbox post, and a trash bin. Something else started happening around that time. Neighbors began quietly approaching us, not loudly, not publicly, just short conversations while walking dogs or checking mail. "We saw your violation notice." That happened to us last year. Karen does that sometimes, but none of them had pushed back. They paid the fines, adjusted their homes, stayed quiet, because fighting the HOA sounded exhausting and expensive. Karen had built something powerful, a reputation that resistance wasn't worth it. So we changed strategy. Instead of arguing about the violations, we asked for records. Formal written request went to the board. Enforcement logs for the past 24 months, violation records across all properties, inspection schedules, fine escalation guidelines. Karen's response came quickly. Certain records are protected for privacy reasons. But that answer raised more questions than it solved, because enforcement transparency isn't optional. It's required. That night, my wife closed the binder and looked at me. "This isn't about landscaping," she said quietly. I nodded. Because by then, the truth was obvious. Karen wasn't enforcing rules. She was controlling outcomes. And systems built around control always have a weakness: documentation, procedures. And the moment someone starts asking the right questions, the structure starts shaking. Karen thought we were homeowners trying to avoid fines. What she didn't realize was that we were preparing for something much bigger: an audit. The documents arrived 2 weeks later, not from Karen, from the HOA management company. Apparently, once a formal request is filed, records eventually have to surface. What we received wasn't organized: hundreds of pages, inspection logs, violation records, email chains, internal board notes. But when we started sorting through them, a pattern appeared faster than we expected. Out of 72 violations issued in the past year, 31 were issued to our address. The next closest household, 3. Some homes with visible violations had none at all. Others had warnings but no fines. But our property had citations for things that barely qualified as issues: mailbox angle, driveway color shade, patio furniture placement. It wasn't enforcement, it was concentration. And once something becomes measurable, it becomes very hard to deny. At the next HOA meeting, we didn't argue. We presented data, charts, timelines, copies of the enforcement logs. We projected the numbers on the clubhouse screen: 72 violations, 31 to one house. Murmurs started spreading across the room. Karen tried to interrupt. "Those statistics are being misinterpreted." But numbers are stubborn things, and every document on that screen came from the HOA's own files. Then someone in the back asked a simple question: "Why were some homes never inspected?" Karen didn't answer. Because there wasn't a good one. That's when the HOA attorney spoke. He had been sitting quietly the entire time, but now he leaned forward. "Selective enforcement creates legal exposure for the association." The room went still, because suddenly this wasn't about landscaping anymore. It was about liability. If enforcement wasn't applied evenly, every fine issued could be challenged, refunded, or worse. The board members looked at Karen, and for the first time since we moved in, they didn't look confident. They looked concerned. The board called a closed discussion. 10 minutes later, they returned. The decision was short. Karen was removed as HOA president. Immediately. All violations issued to our property were voided, refunds issued, and enforcement procedures were rewritten to require documented inspection rotation across all homes. As Karen gathered her binder and walked toward the door, the room stayed quiet. No cheering, no shouting, just residents watching the system reset itself. Because power built on selective rules never survives transparency. The neighborhood felt different after that. Lighter, less tense. Neighbors who once avoided HOA meetings started attending, not because they loved rules, but because they understood something important. Rules aren't the problem. Unbalanced power is. Karen created rules that only applied to us. What she didn't expect was that those same rules would expose her. So now I'm curious, have you ever dealt with leadership that enforced rules differently, depending on who you were? Share your story in the comments. And if you enjoy stories that expose how systems really work, like, subscribe, and share, because silence protects unfair systems. But transparency ends them.